Okay, guys, this week we are going to be doing an activity. And this activity is going to be in the form of a letter or a speech. But you guys are going to be making a recommendation in order to save the coastal sand dunes. So what you need to do is you need to write a letter to the president of the Save the Shoreline on how to select different types of plants in order to help us save the dunes. So in order to do this, you guys are going to have to read this article first. So within this article, you guys are going to be learning about how we can save the sand dunes. So we need to avoid disturbing them. We need to restore the damaged ones. And we also need to learn more about protecting these sand dunes. So after you've read the article, we need to figure out how to select certain plants. So you're going to be evaluating the plants on whether or not they are native or exotic species. And all that means is, can you find them in the area, or do you have to bring them in from another place? And we want to know if they're tolerant to sea spray. Tolerance means that the plant is all right with it. You guys are normally tolerant of your little brothers and your sisters, or maybe you're not tolerant of them. But we want to make sure that the plant is going to be tolerant since they're going to be near a lot of sea spray. Finally, we want to look at that growth rate. How fast are these plants going to grow? And we also want to look at the lifespan. How long will this plant be on our sand dune? So when we're looking at these four things, we're going to make some choices because we want to rank our plants from the most desirable, so we 100% want to put them on our sand dunes, or to the least desirable. So in order to do all of this, we need to look at our activity worksheet. You can either download your activity worksheet or you can use the Google Doc provided to you by your teacher. So in this Google Doc, once you read your article, you have to answer these 4 background questions. Please make sure that you're using complete sentences, because we're going to have to grade you on that when we look at the rubric. Also, please just make sure you're answering the questions too, because if you don't, you're automatically going to lose points on the rubric. So doing these 4 background questions based on the article are going to be very important. Next, we get to figure out which of these plants are the most desirable and which ones are the least desirable. So remember, we're looking at whether or not they're exotic or native. We're looking at whether or not they're tolerant of sea spray, how fast they grow, how long they live, and whether or not they're going to stabilize the sand dune. In my opinion, it's going to be the most important that we look at this stabilization rate, because that's what we want to do. That's the purpose of our letter, is to stabilize these sand dunes. So this may be the most important thing for you to look for. After that, it is really up to you to convince the president that one of these excellents is better than a different one. And so that is up to you guys. During the background planning, you're going to be able to rank your plants 1 through 7. It's going to be important that you tell me how you ranked these. Tell me how you came up with your ideas, and then you also want to make sure that you have a closing. I'm going to show you guys the rubric here in a second, but again, it's going to be important that you have a greeting, a body, and a closing. Now, you guys may have heard me say that you can either do a letter or a speech. So the science teachers wanted you guys to be able to have some flexibility here. So in order to do that, we also gave you a graphic organizer. So that makes sure that you can get those background questions and you get your opening, your plant rankings, your procedure, and your closing. When you guys fill out this graphic organizer, it is completely up to you. It is not 100% necessary. In your textbook, you guys have a rubric. So the reason that I was harping on those background questions is because if you do not have those questions in complete sentences with text evidence, you're not going to get those 4 points. In your recommendation letter, if you don't have that opening, if you don't have all the plant rankings, if you don't have evidence, if you don't have a closing and use complete sentences, you're also not going to get full points. So all of those are very important. You need to make sure that the plants are ranked, and then you also need to tell me why they are ranked that way in order to get full points. So you guys can always refer back to this rubric so you can see how your teacher is going to be grading you. Now you may have a question. How can my teacher grade me on my speech if I don't have a letter? So that's why we gave you guys the graphic organizer, because if you turn this graphic organizer in with your speech, then we can see that you did the legwork required for the speech. You just maybe didn't need to write the whole thing, but you're still able to write bullet points here and show me that, or your teacher, that you knew what you were doing. When you go to turn in your assignment, you are either going to turn in your completed letter or you're going to turn in your speech, and that speech is going to need to be recorded. So hopefully you can see this, or your teacher will send it to you in another form, but it's going to help you figure out what needs to be turned in. So either way, we need those background questions. If you do the speech, I'm going to need a graphic organizer or a rough draft, and I'm also going to need that recorded speech. And then if you're doing the letter, all I need is that final letter, which you can just write at the bottom of the activity worksheet. Please reach out to your teacher if you have any questions on how to do this.